Okay, so this time let's add a plane. Scale it up a bit so we can see what we're doing. Quite often in Blender it's helpful to work on a bigger scale and then scale down after, because some of the tools work better at larger scales. So obviously this plane is going to be 2 for about 6 meters, and very rarely would I use something that big, but I'm using it this big so the tools work better, and obviously so we can see what we're doing rather than zooming in. So that's just something to be aware of. What do we need? We're going to need some subdivision, aren't we? So let's subdivide that. Let's turn these on. Let's give it 100 cuts. Alright, and let's go into sculpting. I'm also going to give this a little subdivision so it's all nice and smooth. Actually, what I should have done first was shade that smooth. Let's go into subdivision or subsurface modifier and give that a little more geometry so it looks smoother. Let's go into sculpting, and once again we'll come down to the cloth brush, since that's the one that seems to have the most interest with everyone. Turn off my symmetry. Dino Topo is off. Right, let me scale this up a bit, and let's do a stroke. Right, so you can kind of see it's the white circle, it's within the boundaries, that stroke I did there. Let's just do another one. Let's start about there. Right, let's have a look at some of these settings here. Radius, we know it's the radius of the brush. The radius units, we know, you know, whether it's relative to the viewer or relative to the scene. Strengths we know about. Normal radius. The description on here is a bit cryptic, in my opinion. So for example, let's bring this up to about double what it was. Let's do another stroke alongside. Slightly longer stroke, but I'm not actually seeing much of a difference there, so I'll be honest with you, I don't really know what that is about. Right, sculpting again, and our cloth brush. Hardness. Okay, we got hardness of 0, so let me just do one stroke down here, and I had my symmetry on. Let's go a bit bigger actually. Let's do one stroke down here, and let's turn the hardness all the way up and see what it does. So it's more, see, the hardness is bringing a lot more dragging and deformation into it. It's a harder, it's kind of like if you've done it with your hand and you pushed down hard on the material and dragged it, rather than just kind of skimmed your hand over the top. So that's hardness. Order smooth. Once again, what I'll do is I'll start there and come down about halfway. Well, let's turn the order smooth all the way up just to see what difference we're getting. So start there, come down about halfway. That order smooth kind of smoothed everything out. Let's try that once more. Right, so let's turn that down to about half and see what happens. Okay, so you can see it is smoothing the brush out, the brush stroke a lot, but it seems to be very kind of very touchy. So let's go back a few steps. Let's undo that one. Let's come back into sculpt. So once again, we'll do a standard stroke here. And a symmetry on again. So let's Control Z backwards. Let's just do a standard stroke here. That needs smoothing. Right. And let's just bring this up 0.2, something like that. Let's try it over here, and I would expect a kind of a softer, although it's looking much the same. Okay, it is a bit softer, I guess. So that's all the smoothing. Right, so let's turn that down. Simulation limit and fall off, I don't really know. Deformation. Right, so we drag, so it's like dragging your hand across the top of the cloth. We got some other options here. Push, pinch point, pinch perpendicular, inflate, grab and expand. These are me playing with. Drag is a standard one, but for example, if I was to push, it's pushing down. It's creating a couple of wrinkles here. You probably need to play with settings to get more of that, but it's pushing down. Pinch point. It's gathering it all in together. Pinch perpendicular. Maybe it sounds like it might bring it upwards rather than downwards, which it kind of has, yep. Pinch perpendicular. Inflate is just going to bring it upwards, I would imagine. Good for hiding dead bodies, I suppose. Grab was a normal. Expand, it's just going to kind of blow it. It's kind of like a ripple effect. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Let's try that a bit further here. Why isn't that working now? Yeah, I've got geometry. Oh, it is kind of, I suppose. Let's scale it up a bit with the F key. Scale it down with the F key. Well, it's kind of pulling it out a bit. I'm not really sure what's going on there. Let's bring this back to drag. We've got a force fall off of radial or plane. Let's bring... You see, when I went outside my circle, it just kind of buggers up completely. So let's make this a bit bigger. Not that big. Right, and let's try a plane fall off, see what happens. Okay. It's kind of like using a wider hand, shall we say. So we got that on plane. So when I click and when I go to drag, you'll see this arrow, and it's pushing perpendicular to that arrow. And as I move my mouse left to right, that arrow is changing. So that could be quite a useful one for controlling. Let's put it back to radial for now. Cloth mass is going to be like the weight of a cloth. So if I turn the mass down, let's say, and I'm not saying these are the exact settings, you know, if let's say one was cotton, turning it down would be like turning it to silk. So we're going to get a lot more on it. And if I turned it up, it'd be more like a denim or a rubber. So it wouldn't wrinkle as much. I probably need to try that on two sides, don't I, just to test that. So let's bring that, that's the up one. Let's bring that down. Yeah, a lot more wrinkles on the lower end. So yeah, cloth mass, select like the cloth type. It's the weight of the cloth. Cloth damping is going to slow down the effect that the cloth brush is having, or lessen the kind of the influence of the wrinkles. So let's try one here. If I turn the damping up, you can see these are far less and spread out than they are here. Okay. What's under advanced? Nothing to worry about for now. Texture we'll come to. We use textures when we're loading custom brushes. The stroke we kind of talked about. You know, as regards to spacing and jitter and things like that. Fall off we talked about. So you know, the standard fall off is this kind of bell curve. Okay, so for example, it won't work with a cloth brush, but let's try it with an inflate brush. So the standard is this kind of bell curve. If I've done a flat fall off, we're getting that. I think we covered that last week, really. Let's come back to the cloth brush. So let's put it back to that. Dino topper we just talked about. Remesh we're going to do next week. Symmetry we know is this up here. Options, stuff we don't really have to worry about right now. So that's the kind of the basics of the cloth brush and how to use it. And my recommendations with cloth brush, well, certainly the way I will be working will be set my stroke to line so I can actually see how much I'm affecting. And really with cloth you want to work in small pieces. Okay, so if I wanted wrinkles, I'd probably work from the bottom backwards. So, and kind of build them up that way. Okay, so that's the cloth brush and its settings.